I dislike predictions almost as much as I hate New Year's resolutions. And I hate these for three reasons. The predictions, not the New Year's resolutions. Number one is they typically aren't grounded in reality. Usually they're promoting a certain way of thinking, which then leads to buying their services or product. Number two, there are no consequences for getting a wrong prediction or just making a poor one to start with. And third, the lesson for what now or what do we do is rarely answered. Usually it's just this far off in the future prediction or thought without anything of what do I do today to be better prepared for that position, to be better positioned for that. But I also find predictions to be helpful for three reasons. One, they establish your credibility if you're able to predict kind of correct. It just shows that when nobody knew what the future would be, you were able to predict it pretty close. That establishes your credibility. Think of a weather person guessing the weather. Number two, forcing you to think high level and futuristically. This is something that comes easily to me, but I know not everybody is in the mindset to think in the future or to think long term. This is a way that you can start to think about the future through predictions, which then fuel insights that then fuel your marketing strategy, which is the third reason, is that these insights, these predictions drive what you do, your marketing strategy. So without predictions, without insights, your marketing strategy struggles. You just can't innovate because without seeing the future, you're stuck in the now. It's a very limiting position, which is why this year and every year to follow, I'm going to make 7 predictions, put them on paper or in recordings, so then in a year, I will revisit those 7 before giving a new 7 and see how many of those 7 were right. And obviously they're not true or false, or it's sometimes a little bit subjective if I was right or wrong, but I will definitely lean more towards the wrong. But it will just be helpful to know, hey, this was predicted and now let's check it out. All with the goal to accelerate how you think about marketing in 2025 and beyond. That is the goal of these predictions, to equip you with some things that I believe will happen in the future so then you can do things differently today. So I'm about to cut into the live recording of those 7 marketing predictions that I shared on LinkedIn. I will be doing more of these in the future. So if you'd like that, please let me know, because it's something I enjoy. Q&A, all of that stuff on the fly. It excites me, doesn't scare me. So I hope to do more live events. Before we get into those predictions, I want to give you just a little bit of a roadmap for this episode. So I'll cut into those predictions, which was a live event on LinkedIn. And then I will go into the 5 reflections for 2024. So kind of just looking back over the year personally, professionally, and reflecting, and hopefully some of those learnings can be helpful for you in your career. And then 3 learnings as a first-time father. I'm not sure if you're not a father, if you're not a parent, how much value this can give to you, but maybe if you're on the borderline or if you're in it, maybe you can resonate with some of them. But regardless, I want to share these 7 marketing predictions, 5 reflections on 2024, and then 3 learnings as a first-time father. And then I'll preview the next 2 episodes and we'll be out of here. So enjoy this live event. But before that, run the intro. Welcome to On Marketing, a show where we explore what marketing is. I won't tell you what to think. I'll help you improve how you think about marketing and life. It's January 7th, 2025. I'm Jordan Ogren, a marketing strategist by day and a podcast host by night. All opinions shared in this podcast are the individual views of the host and guests, not those of their employers or associated organizations. This content is intended for informational purposes and should not be considered professional marketing guidance. Listeners act on the information provided at their own risk. Thank you for being here. If any of these don't make sense to you or you want me to go deeper, please leave a question. So prediction number 1 is that the AI hype will die down. So we'll be talking less about AI, but the clear winners and losers will appear. So what do I mean by this is that things will keep moving fast with AI. I don't want to predict where it'll be. We could be making full-blown videos, avatars, all of those things that we're kind of already at today, but it will keep going, but we'll just talk about it less because it will be so ingrained into our work. Now, with that insight comes the fact that there'll be really clear winners and losers, and not just in the sense of those who use it and those who don't. I've broken down AI users into 3 buckets, which is clearly a very poor way to do it because there's so many ways and so many contexts to use it. But stick with me, as there's 3 buckets that I see of AI users. There's the bucket 1 who have barely used it, pushed it off, said it's going to be gone in a year, and now they're very much so behind, kind of like the older person who just starts using a computer. They can do things with it, but the basic tasks are going to struggle with. Bucket 2 is those who over rely on it and really outsource their thinking execution to AI. This is what frustrates me the most, and what I see a ton on LinkedIn is people just completely outsourcing their entire content strategy to AI, which creates horrible content and removes you from getting any benefit or value from that content. And then bucket number 3 is those who have found a perfect blend of human plus the machine. Obviously, this is very hard to define what this exactly looks like, but it's those marketers who are already collaborating with the machine, who aren't outsourcing the thinking, but using it as an assistant. They will be so much further ahead come 2026 than bucket 1, who's just barely getting into it, and then bucket 2, who I believe will have long-term consequences for outsourcing their thinking. And other great thinkers have touched on this. When I started writing, there wasn't AI, so I don't think I would have gotten as good as I've gotten at writing if I had AI. So I think there's these long-term consequences for that bucket 2 of people who outsource their thinking that will become more clear come 2023. So what's the lesson? While we'll talk less about AI, it will grow in capacity for marketers to use it. So begin investing more and integrating into your processes. Think process first, not tool. Where can this tool go in my process? No. What is my process, and where could a tool make it more efficient? And then use it. Keep using it daily, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but do not depend on it. Do not outsource the thinking. So that's a lesson for prediction number 1, which is AI hype will die down while the clear winners and losers will appear. Prediction number 2, going off this AI thought, is that documentation, transcripts, and knowledge hubs will become more important in the future. Now, a lot of people could listen to this and be like, dude, that's been around since 2012. The companies in the areas in which I'm in, this is very revolutionary. It doesn't make much sense to document things, because if you think about how business was in the past, it was a very closed system. We don't want to share our secrets. We don't want to post anything. We don't want to have anything able to be found so then our competitors can beat it, because we thought that secrets were the way. IP, intellectual property, all of those things was way, and I'm not arguing against it. Success doesn't come from being closed source. As we obviously know with coding and all that, success comes with open source. If we can agree upon that, then obviously that's why we're not where we're at. But if we agree upon that, we can begin documenting, we can begin creating context fodder for the machine, because how does AI do its best work? With data, with fodder, with stuff that you give it, rather than just using its typical LLM. Because AIs use large language models, LLMs, to create content. Humans can use LLMs as well, little life moments. So that's just one small way. So you have to document those life moments so then AI can use them. I want to touch on 3 forms of fodder, which kind of touched on in the prediction, but just go a little bit deeper on them so you can understand them, and then kind of finish with the lesson. So the first is a really easy one, is just transcripts of recordings. This is where I find so many people aren't doing this with AI, but it's so easy. You just record your meetings, all meetings, unless it's some budget or very confidential meeting, record everything. AI isn't going to send that answer to someone when they look it up. So just record everything, and this gives you a huge amount of fodder. The next is document. So if you have a marketing strategy, if you have a campaign strategy, document everything. So then you can go back and look, hey, this decision was made. Why did we make this decision? Oh, it's all there. Awesome. Then that AI also can use it. And then all of those 2 things go into a knowledge hub. I use Notion. You can use Coda. You can use Loop, which is a Microsoft product. But regardless, you have a knowledge hub where all those things go. Your brand guide, key messages, whatever also documentation you have. Put it there so you can kind of do a one tap to the AI, so it has all of your things in one place. Because for AI, it all comes down to context. Context is defined by the fodder, the stuff we can give it that can give it just a little bit more insight. So that's why this will become so effective, important if you want to do effective AI use. If you want to use the machine in an effective way, this will be needed. So I think it's going to be big in 2025 and 2026 and on, even if it's big in some of the small areas of SaaS or different places that have been doing this for a while. I think a lot of businesses are going to realize the power of documentation and having kind of a hub for all your context, your fodder that AI can grab. So the lesson, quite simple: record more meetings and conversations, document more of your company's strategy in documents, like put it down on paper. And then you can upload that to the machine or to the Knowledge Hub, and then use that context to have better outputs. Pretty simple, but kind of revolutionary for some people. So prediction 2, documentation, transcripts, and Knowledge Hubs will become more important in the future to use AI effectively. Prediction number 3, video will become the main content medium. I've been saying this since 2020 when I recorded a video every single day. But now it's kind of impossible to ignore. Video, I believe, is the content of the future. How do I know? Look at all of the platforms. TikTok, which is a video-only platform, now someone's going to be like, they're going to ban it doesn't matter. Reels, YouTube Shorts, it's all built on the video component. And then you look at LinkedIn, which is trying to do video. People are commenting and saying it's stupid. LinkedIn, stop doing it. Regardless, it doesn't matter to me, because when people invest in places, they will really try to ensure that it's successful. So that's why I believe video is the future. But if you don't believe me, here are 3 more reasons to invest in video in 2025. Reason number 1 is video creates the most content. Video is a rich medium, meaning if you record a 60-minute video, you can get 6 to 8 video clips, 6 to 8 text posts, 3 to 5 ideas to write about in the future that you didn't even know you wanted to touch on that came out of that video, and then you obviously have that full video for distribution. In contrast, if you spent the same time writing a 1,500-word essay, all you get is that essay. You can try to take bits and pieces from the essay. That's really hard to do if you didn't think of that beforehand, but it's really hard to take written word and turn it into tons of content forms. Video is not. Video is so easy that you do it one time, upload it to Opus Pro, and then boom, you have a bunch of short clips that you can upload to Shorts, Reels, TikTok, LinkedIn, all these places that are now pushing it. Number 2 is that video builds brand at scale. Think about if you only could write letters to a loved one. How connected would you feel? I think decently connected, better than not talking at all. But imagine if I gave you a phone and you could FaceTime. You could send one-way or FaceTime messages to this person. Would you feel any closer to them than just writing the letter? I think so. The same is true with video. You get to see me like this live, like this podcast right now, and you begin to feel like you know me more than if you just read my words. Now, really great writers, I aspire to get there. Really great writers can do that as well. But more people can do this on video just because of the medium. It makes it easier to connect with a person than written word. You have to have a strong voice to kind of stand. Ann Hanley, there's certain individuals that I feel connected to purely through writing, but that's like 1 in a million versus video. You can get very connected to someone. So if you want to build your brand at scale, I argue video is the best way to do that. And then finally, reason number 3, which I touched on, is that social platforms are prioritizing video. So by doing video, you're going to work with the current. So rather than swimming against it, you're going to create videos as the platforms are trying to push more videos out. Or as there's more platforms that are video orientated, so you can distribute it to more places. Not always a great strategy, but still stick with me. And even Spotify or some of these podcast players are starting to do video, which only means that video podcasts will get promoted more. I've seen this personally. I don't get tons of views, but now that I've switched to videos for my podcast on Spotify, I will get more views because they're pushing it to more people. Makes sense. So swim with the current, not against it. Create more videos. The lesson, literally that. Begin creating more videos. Invest in lo-fi. Like me right now in this live, I prepared obviously by writing a pretty lengthy essay and all that, but it doesn't take a huge production. I got my books behind me. I got no light. I got a decent mic here, but still, it doesn't matter. So invest in lo-fi videos, low production value, and improve your video muscle. And then eventually you can start to do these higher production that you put on your website. Again, prediction number 3 is that video will become the main content medium if it's not already. Prediction number 4 is social media activity will consolidate to a few platforms. This is going to get a lot of people riled up because I see so many people talking about, hey, I'm going to this platform. Hey, I'm going over here. Blue Sky, Threads. They keep saying they're going to be next, but they said the same thing about Clubhouse. Now, while I did spend a bit of time on Clubhouse, I'll be honest, I quickly realized it would fail. And I believe the same is true for Blue Sky, Threads, and all these other new platforms. My prediction is that most social behavior will go to a few platforms over the next year. Even though there's an explosion of all different platforms, I think they will regress to the mean and they'll stick on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and sorry, liberals, but I think X will stay around. And Blue Sky won't beat it. Now, why do I believe this? Because I can already hear people getting very upset. 3 specific reasons is why I believe this. First thing is using jobs to be done thinking. Second, 3 headwinds against new social platforms rising up. And then 3, applying other domain knowledge. So first off, jobs to be done. When I was on Clubhouse, I quickly realized using jobs to be done that it doesn't solve a job to be done. Now, if you don't know what job to be done, framework is, the job student framework is, here's a quick refresher. Essentially, people do not buy products, they buy progress. When I buy a drill from a hardware shop, I don't care about the shiny features. I'm not buying it for a 2-inch hole. I'm buying it for the hole, but what will go in that hole? A family photo. So in essence, I'm buying a warm living room progress versus a 42-bit drill. I'm not trying to buy the best drill. I'm trying to buy the progress of creating my living room into a safe haven. The job to be done is to help make my home a safe haven. So that's the issue, is the same thing that should be applied to social platforms. They must be hired for some reason. And for me to switch to a new platform, there has to be something there. And I think that's where most of these fail. Threads, but it's specifically Blue Sky, is literally a copy and paste of X. So while it didn't discover a new job or progress, you could argue that they deliver I'm sorry, liberals, I keep going against you, but they deliver progress for liberals to essentially signal to others that they are better, more superior than their conservative scumbags that loiter on X. It's a simple switch to not support Elon. But again, I don't think that's strong enough. I don't think it's heavy enough to actually get people to stick there, because maybe a ton of people will go there, but it's not about membership. It's not about how many people are there. It's about how many people are spending daily time there. And that means that I have to change behaviors, which leads into the 3 headwinds against new social platforms from rising. Most social platforms fail. I mean, just think about it. Facebook, YouTube, they've been around since 2006. It's almost 20 years now, and now they weren't that big at the time, but it's almost 20 years since they've held relevance. Why will things change right now? I don't know. I'm not sure. And that's why I get to this belief. But I think there's 3 reasons that will ensure that a new platform doesn't rise to the surface or rise past the surface. Number 1 is very simple: network effects. Social platforms are unique SaaS products that grow entirely through network effects. If nobody that I know is on Threads or nobody's on Threads, then the platform doesn't make sense. This kind of creates a catch-22. You need to get more people, more of their friends on the platform. So where do you start? Because they're somewhere. They're spending time elsewhere. And I believe that's why it's hard to dethrone social platforms. You already have friends, family on these platforms. So why leave? Why change? Why switch? That's that critical question going to the jobs to be done. The headwind number 2 that will keep social platforms from rising is behavioral habits. Simply put, we resist change. This is the same for a new app, a new social platform. I need to do 2 things, really. I need to make the app a new habit, and I need to gain time to make the app a new habit by removing old habits. 2 very hard tasks. So that's why I think it will be very hard for people to make the switch just because of our habits. And then finally, there's one last thing, which kind of goes on the network effect, but making new friends is hard. If you're a marketer or you're someone who's trying to build a platform, build community, it's really hard to go to a new place. I mean, imagine growing up as a kid, and as you're about to go into the 7th grade, you move somewhere else. New platform, new place. Yeah, sure, there's opportunity, there's differences, there's things you enjoy, but man, it's kind of hard to build friends with people who have been there for a while, who have entrenched communities and friendships. So obviously, if a new app's new, you can jump on it, but I think just in general, making new friends in places is very hard and will be a barrier to keeping people on the platform that they currently are on. And then finally, other domain knowledge. Look around. When will a new Amazon, a new Walmart, a new NFL, a new NBA, when will new ones arise? I think there's this unique place in time that we're in history, that there's certain places, Google, that hold so much power. And I think the social platforms are that way. I think people can dismiss that by easily saying, oh, Blue Sky is the future. Here's 7 reasons why, without totally looking into, well, why hasn't a Blue Sky came up before? This is one of the weaker predictions, but what is the lesson here? It builds off a strong premise or point of view that I have, is focus on being active on less platforms. If everybody's going to only go to 4, you don't need to be everywhere. Doing better on 1 to 2 platforms is a better strategy than just trying to be everywhere and kind of not doing great on all of them. And by doing that, by going to 1 to 2 platforms, you will align with consumer behavior and allow for better resource allocation and better ROI. It's quite simple. If I can go to one place where a lot of people are, it's just going to be better than going to 7. So focus on being active on less platforms. Prediction number 4, just to review, is social media activity will consolidate to a few platforms. Prediction number 5, this one I'm a little shaky on. Mid-form content becomes a new favorite content medium. You hear it all the time. Short form's the future. It's the future. Long form's coming back. People want to listen. But rarely do you hear anybody say, hey, what about in the middle? What about mid-form content? I actually had never heard of it till I started to do this, which is kind of cool. But then I started to think, and I'm like, man, some of my content Some of my best content is mid-form. It's a short 25-minute podcast. It's something short enough that isn't short form, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, but isn't long form, an hour podcast. So what is mid-form content? I think it's easiest to define as videos being about 3 to 10 minutes. So TikTok, IG Reels, LinkedIn videos, they're longer than a typical short form, but they're not a 45-minute live video or whatever on LinkedIn or TikTok. You can get up to like 10. So it obviously changes with the platform, but I think 3 to 10 minutes or around there is kind of a mid-form. Maybe 3 to 8 is actually better. Podcast, YouTube videos, as I mentioned, 20 to 30 minutes is kind of that mid-form. And then text, a little bit unique, but around 750 to 2,000. So maybe not the super long LinkedIn posts, but those longer LinkedIn posts that have value in them, but they're not really long and they're not super short. Now, why is mid-form going to rise? Why do I predict mid-form will stand out? Well, I think the argument has always been short versus long, and I think it misses the boat because I think there's a dilemma with short and long form content. Short form is really great at optimizing for accessibility. It's consumed very easily, right? 60 seconds, boom, I consume it. But it struggles to deliver on the progress. It struggles to give me enough that I can actually change my thinking or do something different. Now, long form is way too over-indexed on that progress, but the accessibility or the kind of the amount of work to get that is so high. I have to listen to a 45-minute podcast. I need to tune into this, hour-long, whatever it may be. It becomes very long, but again, that's how you actually, like a book, for example, is the best way, in my opinion, to grow, but there's a high cost to that. So mid-form, in my view, kind of delivers on both. It's short enough that it's still accessible, but it's long enough that it's bringing value to actually help you make progress. So I think it balances being digestible while still helping your audience make progress. I'm not exactly sure what this looks like. As I mentioned, my podcast now is around 20 to 30 minutes, and clearly I'm getting more listens. I think that speaks to this fact that people don't want super short, kind of like empty, quote unquote, but they also don't want to invest hours and hours of their time. So mid-form, I think, will make a rise. So what's the lesson out of this? Learn how to deliver digestible content that helps your audience make progress at a smaller time investment than long form. So if you create long form, try to be more brief. Try to be semi-brief with extreme clarity. And if you're short form right now, try to just extend it. Try to figure out what are some additional thoughts or maybe actions I can give to this person, the listener, the reader. So it's kind of in this mid. So it actually helps them make progress, but it's not too long. So wherever you're coming from, long form, pull it in a little bit. And if you're short form, try to extend it, deliver a little more value. Prediction number 5, mid-form content becomes a new content favorite medium. Prediction number 6, websites continue to lose to the middlemen. This is an interesting one because I think in my experience, so many people either don't focus on websites or don't, and then they do, and they're like, oh, I need to get this ready. Well, I don't think websites will be that important. No, stick with me. I think your website is one of your digital homes, but not your most important. Most users today do not go website to website. They go from app to app, social platform to social platform, maybe a little game in here, Pokemon Go, and then I'm back to this platform. So most first impressions don't happen on your website. They happen on social. Imagine you need to find a new mechanic. Your friends give you 2. Now, do you go to their websites or do you go on Yelp? You go online, digital, to first find that somewhere other than their website to get more of a credible third party to either say, yay, they're great, or hey, this person kind of way overpriced me and I don't like them. So I think the website has a place, but we're in a social first world. So the implications, the internet started as a website or brochures, kind of digital, but you would go one-to-one. There wasn't social, or you had MS, you had these messengers that were different than our social media today. So it made a lot of sense. But today, very few people will go to websites first. They kind of conjugate, if you think about a town square. They're in this town square. So should we abandon websites if nobody's coming to them, if they're in the town square? Now, first off, I didn't say nobody's going to come to it. I'm just saying that they're not going to come to it right away. So I believe websites still have a place for 2 specific reasons, or for 2 main reasons you should have a website. Your company has no social media or little commentary from others. Now, just imagine there's probably a lot of local that nobody's really talking about online. You might want a website to kind of give a little more context, because that would be really bad. I go online, can't find anything from any third parties, and then I can't even find your website, or it's super scammy. That's really bad. So if there isn't much out there on your company, I think it is a smart idea to have a website and to constantly update it, put a lot of resources into it. And again, the most important place that your website has, I believe, is when someone's ready to buy or talk to sales. So if you're B2C, clearly your website has a place. And now TikTok Shop, Instagram Live, you can sell stuff on there. So that's kind of changing. I'm not an expert there, so don't listen to me on that. But if you're in B2B, it's really only a place that someone comes to fill out a contact form, to learn a little bit more, or to talk to someone, to fill out a contact form. So the first person, if your company has no social media or a little commentary from others online, that would be my first action, is how do we get more of that? How do we get more reviews? How do we share more people's stories, or have people share their stories? So then we have stuff that someone can go to for third-party credibility. Now, number two, if you're in B2B, you need to have a website that delivers on this kind of, I would say, an information gathering person, right? They saw you online, they saw you at a speech, they had their first impression elsewhere, but now they just want to validate. Now they just want to learn a little bit more. So having your process, having pricing, having all these things on your website is so helpful when you think about the job to be done for your website. It's no longer first impression. Welcome to my website. How are you? It doesn't matter anymore about that. It's trying to get this person to where they're going to as fast as possible. What does this mean for your content, for your marketing? Is create content where your audience is. Your website is a repository for your content, but shouldn't be where your mind goes to right away. We need to pump out the blog on our website. No, create on social, create a content engine on social where you can scale it, and then bring your content to your website. Most companies do this backwards, right? They post it on their website, and then they go to LinkedIn, they go to social and just leave a link or a few words, and they say, read more here. That's so backwards. View your website as a content and information hub, not the first stop shop for prospects. So what's the lesson here? Invest 20% of your efforts into a good website and spend 80% of your efforts in creating and sharing on social. Then repurpose that content on your website for the few who will actually land there. Do not think first website, think social first. That's the main lesson for this prediction. Prediction number 6, websites continue to lose to the middlemen. All right, finally, prediction number 7. We get here, we're 30 minutes in. I'm having a great time. A little bit less than that because we didn't start it right away. Prediction number 7 is humans continue to win the brand game. This prediction is not revolutionary. Trust me, it's been done for years. Companies like ESPN, WWE, Morning Brew, Refine Labs, there's been so many of them that have realized that, hey, we need to build personalities, which then build the brand up. We can't create the brand and then have the brand bring the personalities up. That's backwards. Now, WWE takes this to extremes, creating full stories, full archetypes for characters. I don't think you should go that far, but I think you need to make micro creators of your brand. So if you have someone who's very analytical, detailed, make them a micro creator and then have them create content that certain people would like. So, hey, I follow ESPN, for example, but I really like this woman who covers sports in an emotional way versus this guy who uses more data-backed. Could be baked in data. But somebody else will like that guy over that. So ESPN does a great job of capturing more demand by having personas, micro creators who are a little bit different. So I don't think you shouldn't craft, but you shouldn't like make things up. So if someone's really good at writing, have them do writing content. So use the gifts of the person, but think first of humans, not logos. Because at the end of the day, we don't connect with logos. I've never fallen in love with a logo, but I have fallen in love with a human. So use the human. And now again, someone might argue, what about Volvo? What about Apple? What about Nike? Your logo isn't Nike swoosh. Okay? Just simply put. Volvo, yes, they're associated with safety or whatever, but your brand isn't them. I'm not talking about the Coca-Colas or the Amazons, right? They're a lot different. Their logo means something. Yours doesn't. So create the people, push the people up, and as they say, a rising tide brings all boats. So as your people gain fame, popularity, expertise, then everything in your brand also goes up. It's kind of simple, but if you want to build brand affinity faster with people, help them fall in love with your brand, you need to put the people out first. The lesson: invest in building micro creators for your brand who strengthen specific points of differentiation. Like I mentioned, specific points, whether it's data, whether it's emotional storytelling, or something specific to your brand. And then have these micro creators lead your content development and become active on social channels where your audience is. Leading back to prediction number 6, you need to be social first, which is great for people because brands suck on social. No offense. So get your micro creators out there, build their brands, and by 2026, 2027, your brand will rise with them. Oh, what if they leave? That's a whole nother discussion. If you haven't listened to this podcast, I've talked about that in a few episodes. So just go back and listen to season 3, season 2. It's in there somewhere where I discuss that, sure, there are trade-offs that your employee can leave, but the benefit for you is so much higher, and that's why ESPN and these brands do this strategy. So prediction number 7, humans continue to win the brand game. All right, finally, a bonus prediction. You didn't know I had this comment. I didn't either until this morning. Bonus prediction number 8 is how people find you, SEO, will be radically different. I haven't written on this, so it's going to be a little more loose, but I've talked about this, and I've had people on this podcast that have presented a new way of search in the future. They might call it SGI, Search Generative Intelligence, where you search and Google pulls up something. But even regardless, think about Reddit. Google with Reddit now is pulling Reddit to the top 3. So you're getting found maybe on Reddit. Hey, has anybody had experience with this app? Hey, has anybody experienced with this lawn care company? So you start to realize that how people find you, it's not your website, will continually change. It'll be radically different come 2026, 2027. So what's the lesson? How can you be prepared for it? Because I don't want to go on and make any predictions on AI will be delivering this much % of search results. I don't know. I don't know if it's search, if we're voice searching. I just don't know. And I don't want to make that prediction, but I can guarantee how people find you in 2026, in 2027, 2028, and 2025 will be different than how they found you in the past, which means that you need to be positioned for that. So one piece of advice, a lesson here, is create human content, original research, and context-oriented answers, so then the AI can use your answers to help someone. So I'm in Wisconsin, Green Bay, Wisconsin. If I typed in, what is the sentiment for marketers in Wisconsin? I don't know what it'll give me, but if you are a company in Wisconsin that does marketing, it'd be very helpful to be pulled from that, or help me think of marketing strategies for a Wisconsin-based company, and then they could pull your stuff. So it's thinking in the sense of original research that AI just can't do, human content, which AI can't do, and then context-oriented questions or answers. So not just like what is marketing, but something around how to do marketing in Wisconsin during the winter. Something that's very context, that how I look through AI or how I use AI to find stuff, Transit or whatever the app is, then your content will be pulled up. So those are 3 ways I think you can be better prepared for how people will find you, is create human content, create original research, and create context-oriented answers so then AI can reference your content. And another simple way or lesson from this is to be on social. People will find you on social first, as I mentioned in that previous prediction. So if you're not on there, you might not be found. And that's where more people are going to TikTok to search for questions or answers. So it's going to be so different, but your company, your brand has to figure out, how do we become that first search with AI or on TikTok or on Reddit? So that's it. Those are the 7 predictions, actually 8 for 2025 that I will revisit come the end of 2025, come December 2025. I'll revisit these and I'll be critically honest. How did I do? Did video become the main content medium, or was I wrong on that for another year in a row? So that'll be super fun. So stay tuned, stick around for that, because this is helpful. This is actually probably very helpful for certain people who haven't thought about it, but the reflection in a year will be way more helpful. And because that's kind of where I started with this. I was like, I wish I made predictions so I could look back on them. So rather than crying and just not doing anything, I said, well, I can't change the future, but I can do some today, so then in the future. So if you want to learn, if you want to know how these turned out, make sure to stay tuned, and I will be releasing an episode every single week that you can listen to on marketing, on life, to just keep improving how you think about it. Thank you for being with me today. For all the listeners, nobody came to the live. I want to do more of these, so if you would be someone who would join a LinkedIn Live, let me know, because I want to do more of these live events where we get a little Q&A. I think I'm pretty good on the spot, so I really wanted to try that. No questions today from the chat. That's all right. Thank you for all the podcast listeners and the YouTube viewers. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to the end, and make sure to stick around for next week's episode. Thank you again for listening, and continue being contrarian. I hope you enjoyed those marketing predictions, and I hope you're able to put them into practice, really focusing on the lessons that I share at the end of each prediction, so your marketing can be better prepared for the future, whether that's 2025 or 2026, 2027. So now let's look back on the year. It's January 7th when I'm recording this, so kind of fresh. Looking back on 2024 and just reflecting on a few reflections, things I've learned, took away from 2024. So number one is maintaining is where the real work is at. So think about many things in our life. We think starting is the hardest, starting to go to the gym, starting a meditation practice. But the real work, I believe, and I learned this year, comes after you begin. It's the showing up day after day, the maintaining that is truly the hardest part. This was true for my podcast, trying to show up every week, went to bi-weekly, now we're back to weekly. In my fitness and my health, it took me a little bit last year, but I really got running towards the end of the year with my fitness. I still need to really dial in on my nutrition, and then finally meditating. This whole year for me was focusing on continuing the foundation I've laid 6, 7, 8 years ago. Nothing really new or exciting, but it was just doubling down on those things, maybe removing one or two and just going deeper on meditating, reading the Bible, all these things at which have helped me be a better person. This year was really about maintaining. Not maintenance in the sense of fixing things that are broken, but just keeping it going, keeping the ship going. And really for me, I've gained a lot of joy from building habits that last rather than just switching things up all the time, starting. So what is it in your life that you could just put a little bit more effort on to maintain and keep it moving versus always thinking of something new to start, which could be the door that unlocks your growth, but really I think it's in maintaining. It's in doing the things that we know are important day after day after day. Number two, which is a little contradicting to that, is that doing new things is still important. So even though this year for me was all about maintaining, 7, 6, 8 years ago, if I didn't start the new things, then I would have nothing to maintain. So this year I really learned, as much as I have all these things going that I need to maintain, keep them going, that doing new things is still important. So for me, that looked like going on TikTok for around 2 to 3 months, posting 2 to 3 videos every day. As a marketer, I wanted to learn the platform. So rather than just read a few things and say, oh, I understand TikTok, and then go and give clients advice on TikTok, which I have no clue about, I jumped in. I went head first. I really consumed content first and then started creating, like I said, 2 to 3 times. And that was super fun. I learned a ton. I got hopefully over my fear of just recording quick videos, and that has helped me grow more. So it's this fun kind of paradox or irony of that, sure, you can plan your growth, the things that I talked about in number one, maintaining habits, doing these things over and over again. You can plan that for your growth, but I've also found that growth can come through spontaneity, through doing things that you didn't think, through a friendship or something that you never planned, and all of a sudden you're growing through it. I believe that growth comes with the familiar and the new. So we need to balance both of those rather than just only focusing on doing the things at which we've been doing, number one, but also trying to do new things. And personally for me, 2025, I want to do this even more. Maybe take an art class, maybe do pottery, and doing things that I've never done so I kind of stay in this beginner's mindset and I never get to this point at which I think I have all the answers, because truly none of us have all the answers, and I think doing new things just keeps you in that framework of like, wow, I can constantly learn, and that's fun. Number 3 is no one is going to create film for you. This one's a little bit out there, but I'm going to try to pull it in with an example. My dad and I watch a lot of sports. Not together all the time, but we watch sports, and then when we come together, we have great conversations while watching sports, preferably the Packers right now. When we watch these sports and a player does something really great, my dad will call that creating film. And he talks about it in the sense of that player now will be able to use that film when their contract comes up, when they're trying to ask for more money, trying to prove their worth. So to the lesson that no one is going to create film for you, sure, those players, using our example, could rely on the team, win a championship, be well positioned so then just all the players look better, but don't rely on that solely. You need to go out and make the plays. You need to go and create the film for you. Now let's apply this to your career. The company you work for isn't going to create your film. They're not going to help you get to your next step. Let's just leave it at that. Unless you are in a big company, Unless you're in a growth mode of a company that there's tons of upward mobility, most times the company just doesn't care about pushing you forward. That is obvious. There's zero incentive for them to increase you to more pay or whatever. They get less revenue. You go to somewhere else. They don't have you anymore. So there is an incentive for the company not to help you create film. Because what does film do is it helps you get more money from that organization or go to a different place. So you must find ways to create film for your career. And that isn't just doing work at the company. Again, I've iterated this so many times in different points of content. And I've experienced this in my own career that if I didn't have my podcast, if I didn't have my LinkedIn audience that I built, I have nothing when companies let you go or things happen. So that is a huge learning that no one's going to create film for you. You must create it because you're going to want more of it the next time you switch. All of us will. We all want to have that to say, hey, look at this. It's not always look at my audience I built, but it's just, hey, I optimized this for my church. Hey, I took this nonprofit's website and increased the conversion rate by this much. You need to go out and make the film yourself rather than rely on the company to create film for you. It could happen, but why rely on something that could happen when we all have the power to create film? Number 4, we decide what will help us make progress or not. This is a little unique for me because I'm always hyper-focused on progress. I always want to move forward, move forward, move forward. But then that made me realize that sometimes I can look at situations and circumstances in my life as good or bad for that progress. I got let go. Oh, that sucks. I'm not going to be able to make progress. But does that really make sense when out of that rubble, I'm able to redefine my career. I'm able to realign my next job to better use my skills and talents. Then it becomes a good thing that I got let go. It becomes a good thing that one door closed so many more could open. But at the end of the day, I get to decide. I get to decide if I use the experience to learn and enable more progress in the future, or if I get bitter, blame, and try to prove to others that I was right, or that they were wrong, or that I'm worthy. Whether illness, a new job, or even a new baby, we decide what we do with it. We decide if the situation that we're currently going through helps us make progress or not, simply by our decision. That was mind-boggling to me. I recently had a child, which we'll get into, but I started to realize I get to decide if this inconvenience, quote unquote, actually becomes an accelerant to my growth because I'm able to get things from this that I never could have got elsewhere. So I think it's a very important point to realize that we control the events that happen to us, whether we allow them to help us make progress or not. And I think that's fascinating and very powerful. If you feel as if you're stuck right now, if you feel as if you're not making progress, I want to tell you, give you permission to change your mindset about whatever's happening, to use it in a way that enables progress versus inhibits progress. Number 5, the final reflection on this year was most things don't matter in the end. I had a podcast guest a year ago, but recently released it, and I was asking her, how do you gain empathy? And she said, have a kid. And I think it's so true for all of these things. Like, how do I gain more focus? How do I become more compassionate? Have kids. I didn't believe them at first, but it's true. And I think this reflection really settles on the last 2 months of my life where there used to be so many things I would fret about. Oh, I didn't get this LinkedIn post out. Oh my gosh, I have to do this. And with a child, I've gotten really good at focusing on the win or what's important now and doing that thing. So for an example, my newsletter, I've sadly had to stop that. But it became very easy to realize actually after 2 months or however long it's been since I stopped that, it doesn't really matter in the end. I'm more present for my child. I'm able to do this podcast better. So just a little inside one framework that I use for my reflection. And this was the first year. So if you have a better model framework process, I'd love to hear it. But I use a 5 C's model of reflection. So it starts with celebrating, highlight the wins across the year, professional, personal, the challenges, what were those obstacles, those growth areas, then connect, recognize relationships and community, reflect on those meaningful connections, and then number 4, create, assess what you built or contributed to, reflect on how your creative pursuits helped you grow, and then 5, commit, set intentions for the future. So just as an example, some of my commits are health and fitness. Starting in February, I plan to work out 4 times a week, eat healthy, only 1 treat day a week. Trust me, I love sugar so much. But I just realized I need to improve this for my longevity focus. I want to live forever. I want to be 95, still moving fast. So I need to be able to do these things today. I want to record an podcast episode every week. I want to pass 100 plus episodes, increase the listens, all of that stuff. So I found this 5 C's to be a great way to think about my year, but then be able to out of that distill kind of reflections or just 5 key things. Now, let's go into the 3 learnings I've had as a first-time father. It's been around 2 months since we welcomed Lennon into our world, November 24th. But I've been thinking and preparing for this day for a while. I've been reading, I've been talking to people. So I wanted to just share a quick recap of what I've learned after the first month, but really a long time of thinking and preparing for this moment. Number 1, the importance of being present and soaking in the moment. It's natural to dream of better days when it's 2:22 a.m. and I'm feeding my baby or I'm changing her dirty diaper. But it's a trap. The problems a 6-week-old baby faces versus a 16-year-old child are very different. Not worse or better, but just different. The biggest lesson I'm learning is that a child's purpose is not to grow up. Even though sleep training, all of these advice, the books I've read are all about a future state for your child, the purpose of a child is not to grow up. It's to be a child. So then the question is how can I just be with my child even when it kind of sucks? So for me, the simple trick or simple question I ask is what's important right now? What's important now? And rarely is it that LinkedIn post or that thing I'm thinking about. What's really important right now is being there with my child. So focus on that. Number 2, realigning me and my wife's priorities to ensure success. I learned that parent comes from the Latin word peri, which means to bring forth. So the question becomes, what do we want to bring forth? To ensure we succeed here, we redefined our priorities with number 1 being God, which was before, number 2 being the spouse, being our partner, number 3 the child, and then number 4 ourselves. Because I believe to be a good father, I must first be a great husband. And to be a great husband, I need to be aligned with my North Star, which is God. So it makes sense that this is the order. I've spoken with some parents who put the child above the spouse. I just am so gung-ho that if you don't have 2 parents that are loving each other, supporting each other, being a team, your child is just going to struggle. You could focus on the child as much as you want, but if you and your spouse aren't kicking it, aren't moving with speed and agility, what does it all matter? So that is the second thing that I've learned is the importance of just realigning those priorities to ensure we both succeed, aka we bring forth the child that we want to, a loving, kind human. Number 3, this kind of goes off of my reflections, but growth is messy. If you know me, you know I can be a very rigid guy. I have habits, I have things that I like to do, and while I try to remain open, I just prefer to be on my schedule. I think it leads to more growth and just better use of time. But a child has taught me that growth comes from the things that we can't plan. Again, going up to the first thing, just being present, that can grow you so much, but it's hard to plan that. It's just like in the moment, you need to kind of realize, hey, this is the time to be present, and boom, I grow through it. Because a lot of moments that I would almost say are garbage time, thinking of sports, it's like when you put the bench players in, those are actually the times when I and my daughter can grow the most, both by each other, but through our love together. While planning is vital, while being prepared is critical, I believe leaning into the mess is another way to grow and become the best version of yourself. And I think it's almost the only way. That if you go on the mountain by yourself, you can't grow. You need to interact with people, which increases the messiness, the spontaneity. So growth is messy, lean into the mess. Those are the 3 learnings I've had so far as a new father. I'm not sure what I'll do next year, probably not as a year because I can't imagine those changing too much. But those are where I'm currently at, and I'd love to hear if you're a parent, what is something you've learned over last year? What is something I missed that I should be thinking about as a new parent? I would appreciate that so much. Thank you for sending that over if you have that. Now, I want to talk about our next 2 episodes. I'm holding up a 3 here because I like this position, so I'm sorry if you watch this, you see me ever hold up a 3. But the next 2 episodes, again, the podcast is just getting started. We released 38 episodes last year. 54 is the goal this year. And to write my first marketing book, which will be intertwined with the podcast, the guests, their insights, and I'm excited for you to be a part of that, hopefully to speak into it. With that aside, here are the next 2 episodes for Friends of On Marketing and On Marketing. The next episode is Friends of On Marketing number 6 with Tom Winter and Trisha Siddell. This is going to be a spicy episode on SEO, so make sure to tune in. I love these 3 people episodes, 2 guests. It just is so much fun, especially when they have a little bit of camaraderie and I can just let them go. Number 2, the next episode after that is On Marketing number 61 with Justin Price, who does email omnichannel marketing for the Milwaukee Bucks. That's really cool even to say. But the conversation was great as he's just super down to earth, shared some real practical wisdom in marketing, but then even had some better life guidance, which I really took away from. So I'm really excited to share that episode. So make sure to come back next week to hear some spicy SEO takes, and then come back the next week to hear Justin's take on marketing and life. Again, this podcast is nothing without you, the listener. So thank you for being on this ride. And be prepared to get more involved this year. That is a goal of mine for this podcast, is I want to make it as collaborative as possible. So a few ideas for that are voting for guests or topics to explore. I would love that if you could give some insight as what you want to hear next. Hey, I think AI is really important, Jordan. I think you should bring on an AI guest. Or, hey, out of these 3 guests, I think this one's the best one. Maybe more live events. As you heard in this podcast, I did a live event for the 7 marketing predictions. 6 people joined. Nobody asked any questions, but I want to do more of those in the future so you can engage with an expert. So it's not just me, but I'm talking with an expert, and then you can engage with that person. So doing more on marketing live recordings, that excites me and allows you to get more engaged with the person speaking and even myself. And then just more guests coming on the show. I want you, if you're listening to this, you can talk marketing. Maybe you can't talk marketing too well, but you can talk life. I want you on the show. That's the whole goal of this show, is to get people on marketing, and then I can bring them back for friends so we can just talk about anything. So if you're a coder, if you're somebody that's not in marketing, just push through that first episode. And then if we can get a friends episode, I promise it's a great place to be. And I'm really building this fun community of guests that hopefully are helping each other out and building just this community of marketers and people trying to be the best version of themselves and being better marketers. I'm excited for that. So don't go anywhere. Tell a friend, get comfortable, pull up a chair. The ride is just beginning. Thank you for being here, and I hope you come back next week to listen to another episode of On Marketing. What one idea or topic of conversation stood out to you today? Write it down, share it with a friend, post it on social. The main thing is take action. That's how we go from theory to mastery. We need to practice. We need to put it into practice. Thank you for listening and being here, and I hope you tune in next week.